All right, we are back for this is our 11th episode. How crazy is that? I'm super excited. We all I saw the chat there. I like it. We're super excited. We also launched the Mentor Roundtable podcast this week. We're continuing to expand our reach, and this week we even gave our new educators some homework, and they came through, and we are definitely going to use some of their questions. And it was awesome because it was about 2 weeks ago, and usually around Wednesday kind of check in with the group, how people are doing, what are some things that we want to talk about. And Carrie actually said, and we talk a lot about student voice a lot, and Carrie said, well, a lot of the topics are coming from some of us veteran folks who are saying this is what we think the new teachers are going through right now, because it's essentially what we're going through and they're probably going through the same thing. But Carrie said, why don't we ask the new teachers? And again, we've been doing this a long time, and I just stopped and like, yeah, that's a good idea. Why don't we just do that? And Emily and Molly came through, which is great, because I think the purpose of what we're doing on Sunday nights, and then those who are rewatching or now listening on our podcast, thank you, Gaggle, is getting some answers to real-time questions. And in reading some of the things that you wrote, it was interesting to me, because one of the things that you wrote was, are all of my students getting enough attention? And it was something that I wouldn't think about, because when I go into classes, I see, students participating, and I don't see a lot of the asynchronous work. But I think that that's a great thought, is how are all the students getting attention? How are you being equitable with the time that you meet with them? And I think, for us who've been in the profession a long time, we're still struggling with that. So how could, some of our newer educators who a year ago were probably doing student teaching, and it looks 360 degrees different, how are they getting all the attention to our students? So I'm just going to throw that out to our crew right there. That was a great question, and essentially saying, how do I know that my students are getting enough attention? So how do they? Some of our veteran educators, or Emily and Molly, jump in if you're having some great strategy, because as we learned last week when we talked parent conferences, you were the ones who've already done it, and you were helping us and helping the listeners. So just throwing it out to you. How are you ensuring that?
I guess I would say that, part of me wonders like if that's not a feeling that we always feel, like regardless of whether we're in person or whether we're remote or hybrid, there's always that teacher heart of us that feels like we're not hitting everybody, or there's a kid or two that are just not getting our attention, regardless of whether or not we're in the current situation that we are or not. Um, and then if we do feel like that, then maybe thinking about some ways that we can build in some individual time to touch base with students. And I would wonder, I've seen Melissa, do her thing. Don't give me the eyes. So on when we've done your mystery Skype, but you seem to like spin all the plates really, really well. And I'd be curious to see how you feel like you hit all your students. Because I feel like I'm in person with my kids enough that I'm lucky enough to get a vibe from most of them. And then for my remote kids, it's like pulling the camera literally up to my desk with me while my other kids are working and just checking in with them. But I also don't, part of me feels like this is just a feeling we always feel as teachers. Are we always hitting everybody's needs? I don't know.
So Melissa, what are you doing now that Carrie brought that out
You're
there?
welcome, Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think you're right. There's always that doubt in your mind, whether you're face to face, hybrid, or virtual, which I am. But I agree. I noticed the doctor in the house talking about engagement. I think that's a huge piece that the kids are engaged in what you're doing. Also, making sure that you have time with them, not just the academic time. So I know we have a lunch bench on Fridays where the kids can come on Zoom. I have quite a few kids come, and then I put them in breakout rooms, and then I pop in each breakout room. Maybe it has 2 or 3 kids eating lunch. So just creating those opportunities, I think. And I do think that the engagement piece is important, motivation and enjoying what they do. So
So Errol, you unmuted. Did you want to jump in? Because then I'm going to throw it to Molly, because she brought this up.
Yeah, I was feeling the same way too. I only have 15 students, but I'm face to face every day. So I feel like what you said, Carrie, I feel like I should be giving my students so much more attention than I am because there's only 15. But with how the classroom is set up now, I don't feel like I'm spending as much time with them as I would have. So I actually started walking around with post-its or a checklist. Sometimes I carry my class list with me, my grade book, and I've been just checking off on the side of my grade book who I'm sitting with because I always gravitate, we go towards the hand raisers and I don't want to be like that. So we divided my class up into 3 groups of 5. And every day we're rotating which groups I'm sitting with for longer during the guided practice or during the independent work. And I'm making sure to not get to all, besides just the hand raisers, trying to sit with all the students. And like you said, Melissa, not just academic. I've been having lunch with my class sometimes, and I've I enjoy it. And it's something that I feel like I can really build those strong relationships with my students that I'm missing from the pre-COVID world. And I'm also checking off then too, who am I sitting with during lunch or who am I playing with at recess to make sure I'm giving all of them attention. But it's certainly hard wherever we are, in person or remote. So this is a great conversation. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
and it's adapting each time that we do this, and there's a lot more checking, it's a lot more intentional kind of conversations, and a lot and really looking at how to do it. And before I throw it to Molly, I do have to welcome Michael Harvey from Malaysia. We have our furthest viewer this evening, so welcome. It's probably midday there, or probably like 10 or 11 o'clock in the Monday in the afternoon at this point. So it's 9:30 a.m. in Malaysia. So
Good morning, Michael.
thanks for taking some time out of your Monday morning to join us. So Molly, were you feeling like you weren't giving your students enough, or just thought it's something that right now you need some thought into?
Yeah, more so some thought. So I feel like I'm in like a really unique situation in that my hybrid plan for the district is A week and B week. So I go a full week teaching kids remotely with kids in front of me, and I'm live streaming. That's what most of us have opted to do. So it's just a matter of like when I'm asking a question, all the kids in class are raising their hands because they feel more comfortable when they're in class to answer a question. And then there's some kids on the computer that are raising their hands, and there's some kids on the computer that are keeping their cameras off. And then we have mask breaks, and we have to do bathroom breaks to avoid kids walking in the hallway all the time. So for probably like in close to an hour throughout the day, I have to put up a screen on Google Meet. It's like, sorry, we're taking a break. We'll be back soon. Like go on Epic or whatever it is. So I just feel like my kids at home are not really getting as much attention. But when I can't really talk one-on-one to the kids at home because then I'm distracting the kids in my class or ignoring the kids right in front of me. So I don't know if there's really an answer. It's just something that I've been trying to find.
So you've been doing this now for how long? 2 months?
No, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
I
Okay.
was completely remote for the first 2 months, and then this past Friday was the first week that cohort B came in. So I've done 1 week with each set of kids.
So share something that's worked. Is there something that you have found with that many students online? So just for clarity, because we had a couple of questions, this is synchronous teaching as you live stream 5 days a week. There's no asynchronous like A weeks on, B weeks off. This is five days a week, kids in front of you, and kids are logging in at home.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Right. So what is something that you've done that you feel like, okay, this has been impactful? Might not be great, but it's heading in the right direction.
Yeah, so well, one thing that I have found helpful that's just kind of minor is that I'm not sitting at a desk teaching the class and my kids. I have a cart set up in my room with my laptop on it, and I'm just standing in front of the room and I'm pinned to their screen. So every kid, whether they're sitting at a desk or on their computer at home, kind of has the same view of me. Because I feel like if I'm sitting talking to the kids online, then the kids in the back desks are like my head's hidden behind the camera. But we've been trying to do interactions between the kids at home and the kids at school, because for the first 2 months they were all one class, and now they have 2 different cohorts and never see each other. So a couple times we have done activities where they'll do something and then everyone will log on to the Google Meet and they'll get in a breakout room, but actually just a partner, and they have a buddy from home that they're talking to. And that's been going really well because they like to share their ideas, maybe not in front of the entire class, and B, get to see their classmates that they haven't seen on Google Meet anymore.
Love that idea.
Yeah, and Emily, I think you are the reverse, right? You were in person and then went fully remote. So how are you making sure that all the students who they were accustomed to being in front of you and obviously in masks and having that kind of face-to-face, almost sometimes the visual acknowledgement that they're doing the work. How have you pivoted it to now be the opposite?
Well, I've been like partly remote all year. I was doing kind of a hybrid, but I had kids in person and now I'm fully remote. But something that I've noticed is like that one-on-one conversation was lacking, especially remotely for a while. Like I felt like I could never have a time to talk to the students. And some students have given me feedback too. Like Molly was saying, I'm really distracting to them when I have 26 kids on my screen and they're trying to do independent work and I'm answering questions. So they actually really enjoy going to breakout room by themselves, and they've asked that. They've advocated for themselves, which is really nice, and asked to go into breakout room alone while they were working. So now I can just like pop into each room. So I get that one-on-one time while they're still doing academic work, but I can check in with them. And that's been a way, I mean, granted there's 26 kids, so I can't get to everyone every day. So I tried to rotate it, but I like the idea, Ariel, that you mentioned, having a list of your students' names, because sometimes I can't remember which ones I visited, and some students need way more time than others. So to make sure that I'm still getting to those who can work independently, to chat with. So I'm definitely going to use the list, but breakout rooms on our own has been working remotely for that. In person is always tricky, but.
So Ariel, going off what Emily said with the list, do you just keep a paper like checklist, or do you use like Google Keep, or do you use some form of tool to keep a running list of these?
I have my roster printed out, so sometimes I'll just walk around and I'll check my roster just to make sure I'm checking everyone, like what I would use for homework. We have Chromebooks. We're a one-to-one district, so sometimes I'll flip the Chromebook over like an iPad and just kind of walk around and check off as I'm working. Just depends on what we're working on, but we divided our class into 3 groups, and it was really hard for us to figure out how to do small group work, and that really helped. Even though we're not pulling the groups, there's still groups that I know that I need to get to each group, and that was a hard transition for me, not working with small groups. I'm really used to kidney shaped tables, small group, on the carpet work, but knowing who's in my group in my head helps me to divide who I need to work with, so I can divide and conquer and know by the end of the week I worked with all 15 students.
I would piggyback on that. Like I have found myself like I haven't been like a huge like keep track of where every kid is, but I have like a clipboard and a list per class, and like this is where this kid is on this project. It's just like the lag time that you're offered in this environment is so much less, like especially your remote guys, like you need to be there and be ready to go.
Yeah.
And so I do find myself even keeping track of like where kids are in different projects so that I know like when we're hitting the road going.
That's funny you said that, Carrie. I'm doing the same thing
right? Like
for
he's on
writing right now.
this project and he's on step 2 and she's on step 4. It's just there's less like lag time that you get in the classroom when it comes to remote, you know?
Yeah.
And how's that working for pacing? That if they're starting to get some lag, or if Molly, if some of your group is fallen behind a little bit because they're not in front of you, and a week away is a long period of time. And yes, it's yes, it's synchronous learning, but yet it is something you have to keep pace with them. So I just didn't know how that's working out with pacing.
So like how well are we covering the material?
Yeah, how well are you bringing the stragglers along with you?
Better than I thought, to be honest. So I had kids that barely come to Google Meet, don't turn their cameras on, talk to their parents, have talked to them individually, and they're just, sometimes you can't help it. And then when I had them in front of me these last 2 weeks, they're like drawing arrays and getting the right answer. And I'm like, oh, you've been listening to me this entire time. That's wonderful. So I've gotten some like confirmation that it's working, and we are pacing going right along. They're not being retaught anything on their week into school. It's going forward. We're
Mhm.
continuing. We're just taking it slow. So rather than teaching the same lesson 2 weeks in a row, we're taking 2 weeks to slowly teach that lesson so that both sets of groups get some in-person teaching and some at home teaching. And obviously it might not be exactly 2 weeks. It might be a week and a couple of days when it should have taken 3 days or something like that. But
That's a great philosophy. I love that.
thanks.
So that leads me into the second thing that we were talking about, because if you're doing all this planning and you're doing all of this coordination, and another piece that you brought up is that, are you working efficiently? Are you working at nights and you're working on the weekends? And I know about a month ago it was something you were stressing about, but at the same point, we're still talking about it. So what are you doing to make sure you're planning efficiently in these different environments? You're now week on, week off. Emily's, it's different every time I feel like we talk to you. Sunday night, Melissa is fully remote, and Carrie, Ariel are a little bit of mix each time. What are each of you doing to be efficient in what you're doing? And Michael's able to join us from Malaysia. He's going to share some of his strategies for breakout groups and how we're making sure all the kids are having attention. So share some of your efficiency strategies while I bring them over.
Well, I've been planning out about 3 days in advance, and sometimes it's one, sometimes I have to catch up, but I always try and have the next day planned because we haven't closed yet, but I don't know if we will close. So I'm really trying to make sure that I'm always a full day ahead, but that's not like me. Pre-COVID me would try and be like a week or two ahead. But I'm just trying to take it day by day. We never know how things will be. So however it works out, it works out. But
Awesome. So Michael, sorry, I was using the chat incorrectly. So Ariel pointed out I was just sending it to the panelists, but I was asking because you were talking
It did
about,
that to me as well. So that was
yeah, yeah, it took me a minute, but you were talking about some different groups that you were using to make sure they had enough attention, breakout groups, and what are some of the things that you've done?
So we do IB at our school. So one of those part of the course requirements is the theory of knowledge essay. So I've got basically 15 students in the class. So they all do 15 individual essays. So I've created a Google Drive basically where they're dropping their Google document in there with the essay and essay ideas. So I have 15 Google Meets going simultaneously, making sure which one's on mute and which one's not. And
Wow.
That's so true.
Let's go through each individual student, and we just bring up their document, and we discuss how they're going with the essay during that particular lesson. Because everything's back online now here in Malaysia because we've gone back into lockdown. Yeah.
Wow. And have you found that strenuous? Like, that seems like a lot to do. Like,
It is.
as we
Only
talk
40
about being efficient, you come over here, start talking about throwing 15 meets up there. Like, how have you been able to plan that so that everybody's able to feel that you give them the attention they deserve?
So also while because of also for that particular class, they've only got 2 different essay topics. So while I'm talking with them individually, the others are basically discussing within themselves how they're developing their essay. So they're actually working collaboratively on, basically the class is divided into 2. One's doing essay topic 1, one's doing essay topic 2. So then they can have discussions while I go and speak to them individually. So just kind of bringing them out of class, as it were, virtually, and then just working on them individually.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, thanks for that clarify. I thought I was waiting on 15 different groups, but it sounds like doing a lot more collaboration with the different essays. It's not 15 different essays. It's 2 that they're working on and working.
Key for those who are online as well. So those breakout rooms, and you've got differentiated groups as well. Some people are going further ahead in the curriculum, others are staying behind. So I'm basically breaking them into my lower science groups, into different groups where they're working on collaborative projects. That's more project-based learning rather than me just direct teaching. So they divide, that way I can see who's contributing to each particular task. So then I can focus on those students to make sure that they're up to speed.
Awesome. Well, thanks for jumping on at 9:30. You're probably now 10 of 10 over there and sharing some ideas from breakout rooms. So thanks for keeping the tune in and spread the word over there in Malaysia. It's good stuff.
Yes.
All right. So back to Emily and Molly, making sure they don't work all weekend. They got things to do. They're newly in Western Mass, and we want to make sure they have time for themselves as well.
Well, I would go off of like what Ariel and Michael said. I think there's like power in front loading right now, you know, like creating the finish line and letting students work towards it. And then every student can work at their own pace. And that gives you just a lot more allowance for time and for wiggle room when it comes to connecting with kids, rather than planning out each day to be exactly what it needs to be. But instead creating the finish line and let the students decide how they get there, I think there's a lot more power in that. It offers us flexibility, but then also planning without having to plan kind of sometimes, which I like personally.
Yeah, and Melissa, you're doing this each day where all of your students are online. How are you able to make sure that you can plan efficiently, make sure you're not spending an over, amount of time on planning and working with students so that you do have time, see your wonderful family online and doing some great things. How do you make sure to balance that?
It's trial and error.
That's fair. That's fair to say.
They pretty much have a lot of control as to what we do, even though we have a curriculum. Just like our Genius Hour projects, they're steering that ship. I'm not. The Spirit Weeks, they're steering that ship. I'm not. So I try to do it day by day, but sometimes I just put a topic and I see where we go with it, kind of like Carrie. I don't like to plan too much, especially if something bombs. That way I can, adjust and adapt the next time.
So Emily and Molly, what are you feeling you're spending a lot of your planning time on, or where are you spending that time? If you went through your week's worth of tasks and just wrote down maybe like what you're doing on each of the days, where do you think you spend that time besides the actual instruction?
I mean, like of my own time or my teaching time?
So besides when you're actually instructing, are you spending it on planning, replying to emails? Are you cutting things out? Are you planning things in Drive? Are you setting up flip grids? Like, where do you find yourself putting in the time when you're not actually either in front of kids or have kids on the screen?
Right. So right now I feel like I'm spending a lot of my time kind of like grading and giving feedback. So I have 36 kids, and every day we're doing some sort of discussion question about a text we're reading, and I have to go onto each kid's page, find what they wrote, give them feedback that hopefully they're reading, because I don't really know how else to give them feedback or like comment on things and edit things, because there's no more taking a paper and being like star or circle and like quick notes. Like you have to like write sentences explaining what you're talking about. And I think that that's where I'm spending the majority of my time, is just giving feedback on all of these assignments that I'm giving to them.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And Molly, where do you see you spending it now, especially with this shift from all online to, 50-50?
Yeah, I agree with Emily. I've also been spending a lot of time. So like the kids in school, I can look at their work and check it off when they're doing it. But the kids at home are uploading it to Seesaw or emailing me or doing things like that. So I spend time on that, setting up Google Classroom and setting up assignments. What's honestly been taking a lot of time is that I just really don't feel good about having the kids in front of me be doing online assignments when they're in school, because it's their 1 week to be here and they've been remote all this time. And I feel like it just means more, I know, to me as a student, and I think they really enjoy it a lot more too, to be doing physical things and to be writing and drawing and doing things. So splitting up the lessons, because I'm teaching the same lesson to both kids, but then giving their work online and in person, it's taking up a lot of time to be planning both of those and getting all of those materials set.
No, and I can just even see and hear the struggle in your voice, the empathetic, teacher in you looking to like, oh my gosh, they're in front of me. Finally, I finally get these people in front of me. It's been a month and a half, and what do? Have them open up to G Suite, and I think that's a tricky balance that we're having. And I know Ariel, you're 50-50, or you have some kids in front of you. I know that for sure.
No, I'm
You're
full.
you're back. Okay.
Mhm.
What can we help out Molly and Emily here with that time management piece?
Oh, that's like the $1 million question.
Yeah, and then I have a question about assessments next. So go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Ariel.
No, I'm thinking about that as well. I mean, I've been face to face full time, and I'm feeling the same way as Molly. And we don't even have kids at home, and I feel like I'm spending my students are spending a lot of time on their Chromebooks, but it's because a lot of the assignments are online assignments because it's socially distant and it's easy for me to grade. But I don't like that we're not spending as much time. I think I'm wishing for an ideal world that can't happen right now. I'm missing carpet time. I'm missing a lot of cutting and gluing and pasting, but that's stuff that I can't do right now. So I get it, Molly. I want to hear from Carrie because I'm feeling the same way as you're
Well,
feeling.
at first I was like, I don't have an answer. And then I thought, I'm wondering if
But that's refreshing in a sense. I hope for both of you. Not that helps us out, but like, man, we're struggling with this too, and we've been at this a while.
well, then I thought, what if when they're in person, they know that certain assignments are going to be like this. So what about creating like a standard or a routine so that you're not having to recreate every time they're in person, but the routine or the expectation is always the same. So like they know when they're on remote, it's this way. And when I don't even have an example, but I feel like I just know like on Mondays, my kids are full remote and we do something completely separate on Mondays than we do any other day. But my kids know when they come to me on Monday, we're going to do this for math and this for reading and this for this and this for this. And I'm wondering if just looking at your curriculum or activities that you have as a whole and creating up some kind of routine so that students know that when they're in person, it's always going to be this. And when they know when they're at home, it's going to be this. But by doing that, you create less work for yourself. And I feel like I'm just talking in circles right now, but I feel like I'm on to something too at the same time.
So I have a question, just throwing it out to the group, but while you were talking and you brought up writing, so I'll use writing as a suggestion. I don't want to say why, because I'm not questioning, but can the students at home be writing? If you're really focused on the in-person students and want them to write or want them to do something that is more, using their fine motor, can the at-home students do that? Well, they may be online, meaning like us right now, but we take notes, we do different things. Can you have that hybrid in a sense where they're at home doing some of the written work? And I know, Melissa, your kids are home all the time. Do they do some of that as well?
My kids do a lot of notebook cutting, pasting, arts and crafts. So even though they're home, they do a lot of that stuff.
So maybe built-in options even, like when we do this writing activity, you can sketch note, you can brainstorm, you can type up your things. And then that way it gives your in-person people options, but also your home people options to be hands-on or digital. Like maybe even just thinking about a couple of things you would do routinely that you can give. Go ahead, Melissa.
What's the protocol at your school? Is there a safety concern? Is because a lot of schools are going like COVID is not, they've taken supplies, they've taken this, they've taken that. I'm just wondering if there's other criteria here and it's not just so black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is there supplies that they can use? Are you supposed to be using those Chromebooks more so your hands are kind of tied?
A little bit of both. So our principal has been really good about saying like, I know that you guys want to be mindful of screen time and I agree with that. And we don't have protocols that say you can't use paper, but the majority of teachers at my school, which I don't blame them, are worried about it and are like, well, maybe we shouldn't be giving out and handing back papers all the time. So we've been making packets so the kids keep them all week and then they can sit over the weekend. And it's actually gonna be better, I think, getting better because we did send kids home with a packet this past Friday, which we couldn't really do prior to that. So I think that's gonna help us because then I can say, all right, take out your reading packet and the kids at home now have a reading packet too. And that work is done already. But other than that, I wouldn't say it's a black and white rule, but more of like a school culture type thing that people are still very much using Chromebooks for a lot of things. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
No, it does. And so the question I wanted to jump in, talking about, being more efficient and not having you feel stressed on the weekends and planning for almost two groups versus one synchronous group for the 5 days, are we creating our own stress? Like, are we creating activities that we would have a year ago because we're in front of us, and now we're correcting someone wrote 150 papers or different things? How important is assessment versus like the feedback that you are giving? Like, how are you all handling that? Do we need to give as many grades as we are? Do we need to, do go ahead. Emily's gonna jump through the TV.
No, I was just laughing because we just submitted grades and it took me like hours. I'm just laughing of saying like, do we need to submit so many grades?
Like, do we like that? And I'm coming from the principal, now district administrator, and telling the teachers in the district, like, why are you giving 5 things a grade the week before grades are closed? Like, are we creating our own issues in the education field because we're trying to fit things that were a year ago closing grade 1? We're still using our pacing charts, but at the same point, the kids, the environment looks incredibly different. Like, how are you handling it? Or Emily's like, I got to hand all these grades and this sucks. Like, how can we reduce that for ourselves?
Well, I mean, very simple. For me, I'm sure other people are doing this too. I stopped grading homework. I just check it off. It's something that I'm just taking a look, see if anyone needs help. It's used for me for planning, and I stopped collecting it. I do spelling every week. I stopped collecting it. I'm just checking to see if it's done. I am looking at it to use for my data, but it's really taken a load off of me for the grading purposes, and it helps the students feel so much better. And I'm seeing in the chat right now, Michael's writing homework. What is that? There's so much unknown. Like, I'm teaching a grade that I've never taught before, so I'm following what the grade is doing, and we are assigning some homework, but I was collecting it because I didn't know if I should. And now I'm like, why am I collecting this? I'd rather just start. And it took me 2 months to figure this out, but I feel much better for myself for grading, and the kids feel better. They know that they need to do their work if it's assigned at home, if they can, so that they can learn and they can show me what they know for the next day, but they don't have this pressure of work is due. What do I do anymore? And it's really taken this big breath off of both of us and the kids.
So Emily, so that you don't have that same reaction in about 8 weeks when we talk about grades close again, if you were to look back over the last 2 months, which is about what you've been in, take 10% off of what you've had to grade. What are some of those things? What are some things that you can move off of that you actually don't need to grade? And you're this time last year, probably doing your student teaching. It's your first year. I know you want to do your best job and your principal wants to see these things, but where we're at now, reducing some of that's important. Like, what are some of the things that you could reduce?
Probably some of the little classwork and check-in things that we've been doing. We need like the participation and check work grades because we give like number grades, like this one got a 91, this one got an 87. Like, we go pretty deep into, that's what my school does. But I had like 20 like capitalization, subject, predicate, like of like a bunch for all these different things. And I feel like I could pick like 5 and give them a grade on it. Like, I don't need to do as many. I don't need to grade every single check-in to have there. And so, which I didn't really know as my first year. I was like, all right, I'll just grade everything and write everything down and crunch all those numbers. But now I'm definitely not going to do that because they'll get something similar no matter how many I grade.
No, and I'm going to come to you next too, Molly. I'm going to ask you to whittle some things off too. But it's funny because, this is, as we said, our 11th episode. So, and we had a week off. So we've been about 12 weeks, so about 3 months. In the first essentially 2 to 3 sessions or 3 episodes, we talked about kids first, curriculum second, take care of our staff. And now we're a month and a half after that. We're like grades and assignments. We're almost like fell back into brick and mortar school. And what are some things, Molly, now that you've been doing this for a while, what are some things you can reduce and take off your plate over the next, say for the rest of 2020?
Grading wise or just in general?
I would say grading assessments, or in general, if there's tasks that you're doing that just are high effort and low impact, what are those?
Yeah. Well, grading wise, I'm pretty lucky. My school is not huge into grades. Like, we're not crunching numbers like Emily's school is. It's more like progressing, some progress, meeting the standard, things like that. And it's basically just looking at everything they've done and deciding where they fall. So I don't feel very stressed out about that. But in terms of what I can kind of get rid of or take off my plate, I feel like the first couple months, which I wasn't like this during my student teaching, but I feel like since it's my own classroom, I probably fell into habit of planning like so meticulously. And I know Carrie and Melissa were both like, yeah, I don't like to plan. I just write down a topic. And at first I was like, how would you ever just write down a topic and then teach about it? But now that I've been doing it for a couple months, like tomorrow, we are doing a Scholastic Thanksgiving type thing all week. And I wrote on my planner, like, explore Mayflower. And I didn't plan anything else to do. And I was like, all right.
Look at you
wing
growing
it
up
and
right in
hopefully
front of our
it'll
eyes.
go well.
Winging it for the win.
That's awesome. All right, I'm going to give you some more homework then. Can you bring some of those projects next week to show us?
Sure.
Awesome. So again, things fly by, and another great thing that Carrie brought up was a couple of weeks ago, just saying have more just conversations, and that was around the topic discussion too. And we've been going. We're almost at our 45-minute mark, and I always like to end with each of us having something for the week. And one of the last questions we talked about, and maybe we can start next week talking about how are we ensuring that we have this time for the SEL time and our social emotional learners, and get back to ensuring that our students are at the center of this and not talking about as many grades or different things. And maybe that's because, at least in Massachusetts, where Emily, Molly, and myself are, this is around the time that the first quarter closed, especially in elementary school. So maybe something we will kick off next week. And if you have other things that are coming up this week, you to pass it along. So the two big things we talked about today were our students getting enough attention, and how are we making sure to work efficiently and maybe whittle away some of the things. So I'm going to throw it to I look at the grids, but it's not that. So for the five of you, one thing to leave people with that can support them for this week or even the next 2 weeks on how to be more efficient in their work or their planning, or a strategy to ensure the students are getting all the attention that they need.
I'll go first, Melissa.
Thanks, Carrie.
Look.
I think we just need a recording of Melissa's facial expressions. I think like every so often.
One time.
Yeah. I think she'd make like amazing memes, just like, all right, let's call on Melissa when she's not ready, and that'll be a meme of the week.
Or she'll just put our face on all of our bodies, right? Like she does on that photo.
I like it.
So I guess I would say maybe find a way to go project based in one area, one thing, like plan the finish line, but not the product for where it's going to go, so that it gives you opportunity to kind of unleash your students on that curriculum or on that content. And in letting them drive their learning, you're also freeing up yourself from teaching. And then you get time to cycle through and check in with students, but also give them an opportunity to really, take it to the next level. I think kids will often surprise us when we give them opportunity to choose how they want to drive their learning.
No, that makes a lot of sense for sure, because I think once they have that voice, especially as we're all new teachers this year, as we're finding out, and every week it's a new challenge, bringing them and adding their voice is going to make them planning much more efficient and impactful for sure.
Well, and I think, in this remote age too, it's a perfect opportunity to teach our kids. I mean, we've always wanted to teach them how to be learners, but now we're in a digital space and we're going to teach them how to drive their own learning. It's even more powerful now, right?
No, I agree 100%.
I just want to say ditto to what Carrie said. That was exactly what I was thinking, and you phrased it much nicer than I can.
Love it.
I agree. I think this week for me, I know I'm going to be more focused on just letting go of something, but letting go with knowing what the finish line will be, but that it frees up my time. Like I know for writing, we're using Writers Workshop. It's a wonderful program, Teachers College. I love it, but not for the type of teaching that I'm doing right now. It's very difficult to teach this the way that the book designed it to be taught. So I'm letting go, and that's hard for me. I love teaching writing. I love the writing process, but my students need choices. And letting go with some of those choices has really helped my classroom community grow so much better. And I'm going to continue doing that this week. So,
Well, I think sometimes with writing too, there's power in going backwards, right? Like letting them unleash forward and then, rewinding and moving forward from what they've produced too, right? It's just a different kind of.
No,
approach.
absolutely.
I would just piggyback off of the main woman here. Carrie. Even if that topic is there, don't be afraid to ask your kids for ideas, because my kids have taught me so much already. And every year they have so much knowledge to give. I don't care if they're preschool, kindergarten, or senior. They have so much wisdom and so much creativity. It's just we need to tap into it. And some teachers are not used to doing that, or they're worried that things get out of control. But I say just let it go.
Let her
And
rip.
The chaos. That's my theory.
All right. We have a lot of active feedback today. That's awesome. All right, Emily and Molly, what are you going to do this week to give more attention and be more efficient?
You guys are really getting my gears going here.
Okay.
I'm having so many thoughts of what I want to do this week now, but I like the project idea, and I think that like the reading program that we use, the Basil, is like so constructive. And I think that I'm just going to take the topic and try to make some sort of like empty PowerPoint and make purposeful groups and put them in and be like, why don't you guys write down what you've learned and maybe just like see what they know and have them work together in a breakout room. So I'll try that and just like see what they can give me and how they work alone. Because that's definitely a little scary for a first-time teacher, just being like, all right, you kids go in a room by yourself. It's a little intimidating.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That they're in there, but we'll see how it goes. I'm going to try that first.
Like it.
For one, I don't think that Melissa and I are like, just drop them in a room and like, that's what's gonna
I
happen.
know,
Melissa was.
thinking, but I don't know.
But like a driving,
Drop it. No, I'm just kidding.
Drop them and go. We're
but
good.
like, a
First year
driving
teachers,
question is not-
we're good. You made it past 90 days. You're fine.
No. But a driving question or just a one question versus like here's the whole project lined out can be a really interesting,
Right.
especially with the holidays coming up. I feel like this week is like a fun kind of like, let's try something, because what's the worst that's going to happen? School's going to be done and it's Thanksgiving. I can't believe I said that on camera, but like it's kind of like a great time to like just try something out, and yeah.
Right. Because if it doesn't work, you just stop and then come
That's
back.
right. You just reset when they come back.
Right.
All right.
Molly and Emily, that's what I do for the holidays. That Carrie brought something up. We're actually going to do that next week. I'm going to group my kids in breakout rooms, and I'm going to pose the question of how we can make the world a better place, especially our community. And they're going to research some charities because of
I love it.
coming up. They need to give me a charity that we are going to do, whether it's Toys for Tots or Children's Hospital and those breakout rooms. So there is a goal, but they pretty much have fair reign. They're going to talk to each other. They're going to research. So
Nice.
Great idea.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You're not let off the hook yet though, Molly. I see you like counting down like, okay, if everyone else keeps talking, I'm not gonna have to answer this. But what is one thing next week from all of this great wisdom, besides just dropping your kids off in a meet and go? What's something that you can put into practice next week to say, I'm committed to do this?
Well, since I'll be winging reading,
All right.
I really liked what Carrie said earlier about giving them choices. And I feel like that a little bit combats my Chromebook dilemma, because maybe some kids do like to work on their Chromebooks when they're at school and some kids really don't. So I think taking the project-based ideas and the topic and winging it ideas and the choice idea and putting it all together and giving them a choice of what they want to do is gonna be something that could be really fun and create less work for me.
No, I think that's great. And put that in place. Let us know how it goes. Because again, we want to know some of these strategies. One of the things that I would say, and I've been encouraging the teachers that I work with or other teachers that I connect with, is how I know we want to, we talked a little about planning day by day, but if you look ahead and say, okay, in December, we have 4 units in social studies. Why are you planning them all? work with collaboratively with another teacher in your grade, work with 3 others. If you have, typically sometimes there's 4 teachers in a grade, each of you plan one,
Great idea.
and then you have 4. You don't have to do them in the same order. I know the Massachusetts, and I'll just talk to the 2 of you because I know the standards, they are in sequence and linear. But let me let you in on a little secret. Like Carrie said, it's really the end goal. Like, you want to get to the end. If your sequence is off, besides if you're learning some math foundation, or science, don't blow anything up. But if you can learn a unit in a month and it's 4 lessons, each one of you plan one. And not that you just teach that 1 to 4 classes, which again, that could work too, but you then have a pool, like a lesson buffet. Here's 4 lessons for this unit, and you plan one and you share. Again, this goes into the collaboration piece, and it goes into having that conversation. But I think really thinking outside of yourself is going to help you both in that planning. Listen, you both teach what, 3rd grade?
Yep.
You live in the same place, like use each other, like figure it out, like plan something good. And maybe you do. And if you do, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But really use the other professionals in the building, use us, use people online, whatever. Like I'm teaching XYZ in the next week. Anyone have any ideas? It's okay to do that. It doesn't show strength to always feel like you have to do it yourself. Ask people. It's a huge help.
Agreed.
So we've wrapped up to our 48 minutes today. So next week we will kick off with the 3rd question that you brought up, how we addressing our social emotional needs. We talked a lot about making sure we have enough time this week and your own time as well. So I want to thank all of you for joining today. I thank all of the people from from Utah to Malaysia to Massachusetts to Emily's dad and my mom joined us tonight. So we got the whole crew here. It's pretty exciting. And like I said, we launched our Mentor Roundtable podcast, and it's going to be great. So thank you all for coming. We'll see you next week. And Molly and Emily, have an awesome week this week.
Thank you.
You too.